Today, we are going to dive into and review a remarkable book called 30 Lessons for Living, Tried and True Advice from the Wisest Americans by Karl Pillemer. Let's get started.
Introduction.
Imagine sitting in a room filled with elders, people who have lived through the greatest moments of the last century: wars, economic depressions, personal joys, and sorrows. They're not celebrities or public figures, but regular men and women who have seen it all. Their faces are lined with wisdom, their eyes bright with memories, and their hearts full of stories. In this book, 30 Lessons for Living, Karl Pillemer gives us a rare opportunity to sit with these wise souls and hear what they've learned about life. These elders, Pillemer calls them the experts, open their hearts and share their most profound insights, hoping to pass on advice to those still in the midst of life's journey. What do they know that we don't? They've lived through what many of us have yet to experience: the trials of long marriages, the challenges of raising children, the difficulties of maintaining a career, and most importantly, they've learned what it takes to be happy and fulfilled. Their lessons don't come from theory or self-help books, but from decades of lived experiences, mistakes, regrets, triumphs, and moments of deep reflection. In this audiobook, we will walk through these lessons, one by one, as they share their stories, their advice, and their most treasured memories. We'll hear about love and heartbreak, about work and passion, about finding joy in the little things, and about aging with grace. So, let's sit back and listen to what the wisest Americans have to tell us about living life to the fullest.
Chapter 1. Who are the wisest Americans?
In a world that often values the quick and the young, it can be easy to forget that there's a deep well of wisdom in those who have lived the longest. Pillemer introduces us to his experts, elders who have seen decades of change, who have lived through war, poverty, the rise of technology, and the shifting tides of society. These are people who, at the end of their lives, have no need for pretense. They speak honestly, with a clarity that comes only from years of reflection. One such elder is June Driscoll. At 90 years old, June lives in a nursing home, her body frail but her spirit undimmed. When Pillemer first met her, he was struck by how joyful she seemed, despite her circumstances. She sat in her room, thin and weak, but with a smile on her face. "How do you stay so positive?" Pillemer asked. June chuckled softly. "Why wouldn't I be happy?" she replied. "I wake up every day. The sun is shining, and I'm alive. That's enough for me." June's story is a testament to the power of perspective. She had lived through the Great Depression, raised 6 children, and cared for a husband who had been in and out of work due to illness. Life hadn't been easy for her, yet here she was, at the end of her life, radiating gratitude. "Happiness," she said, "is something you make. It's not something that happens to you." This idea that happiness is a choice, not a circumstance, is something that the wisest Americans repeat over and over. They've lived through times when they had very little, but they've learned that joy comes from within. As we listen to their stories, we begin to understand that these lessons are not just abstract ideas. They're hard-earned truths that these elders have lived through. The elders in this book remind us that there is a deep value in listening to those who have come before us. In today's world, where advice is often sought from the internet or from those with little experience, the wisdom of age is often overlooked. But these experts show us that there's a kind of knowledge that only comes from living, through the good times and the bad, through success and failure. They offer a kind of clarity that only comes with the perspective of time. As we move forward, we'll dive deeper into these lessons, hearing from those who have lived the longest about what really matters in life. Chapter 2. Great Together. Lessons for Marriage and Relationships. Love is perhaps the most written about, talked about, and sung about subject in the world. But what do people who have lived through decades of marriage have to say about it? In this chapter, we hear from couples who have been together for 50, 60, even 70 years. Their advice on love and marriage is simple but profound. It's not just about finding the right person. It's about becoming the right person. And, most importantly, it's about staying the course through thick and thin. Take Ruth Helm, for example. Ruth met Joe when she was just 16. She was a young girl who had moved to New York with her family to escape Nazi Germany. Joe was her older sister's friend, and the two of them met at a soccer game. "We were just friends," Ruth said, "but I always liked him." When Joe went off to fight in World War II, they lost touch, but when he returned, they reconnected. It wasn't long before they fell in love. "I'll never forget the first time he kissed me," Ruth says, laughing at the memory. "It was at a New Year's Eve party. At midnight, he grabbed me and kissed me, and I knew right then I was going to marry Joe." And marry him she did. They were together for over 50 years, raising children, building a life, and weathering the inevitable ups and downs that come with a long marriage. Ruth's advice? It's all about respect. You have to respect each other's differences and be willing to compromise. Love isn't always easy, but it's worth it. Ruth's story is echoed by many of the other elders. They talk about how, in the early years, love is passionate and exciting, but over time, it becomes something deeper. It becomes about partnership, about supporting each other through life's challenges, and about growing together. One elder, married for over 60 years, put it simply, it's not about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone whose imperfections you can live with. These elders don't shy away from the fact that marriage is hard work. They talk about the arguments, the disappointments, and the times when they weren't sure if they would make it. But they also talk about the joy that comes from sticking it out, from learning to forgive, and from choosing to love each other, even when it's difficult. One recurring theme in their stories is the importance of communication. They emphasize that good communication isn't just about talking. It's about listening, understanding, and being willing to compromise. Many of the elders talk about how, over the years, they learned to pick their battles, to let go of the small stuff, and to focus on what really matters. Another key lesson they share is the importance of shared values. While love is important, they say, it's shared values that help a marriage last. Whether it's how you handle money, how you raise children, or how you approach life's challenges, being on the same page is crucial. One elder, married for over 40 years, put it this way: if you don't agree on the big stuff, it's going to be a struggle. But if you have the same values, you can get through anything. The elders also talk about the importance of patience. In a world where many people expect instant gratification, they remind us that good things take time. One elder, who had been married for over 50 years, said, "We live in a throwaway culture. People are too quick to give up when things get tough. But marriage is about sticking it out, working through the hard times, and coming out stronger on the other side." These stories remind us that love isn't always about the big, romantic gestures. It's about the small, everyday moments of kindness, patience, and understanding. It's about being there for each other, through the good times and the bad. And it's about choosing to love each other, every day, even when it's hard. Chapter 3, Glad to Get Up in the Morning, Lessons for Work and Career. In this chapter, the elders reflect on their careers and the lessons they've learned about work. Many of them spent decades in the workforce, and their advice is clear: find work that you love. It's not about making the most money or having the most prestigious job. It's about doing something that gives you a sense of purpose and fulfillment. One elder, a former teacher, shared how, when she first started her career, she thought teaching was just a job. But over the years, it became so much more. "I didn't realize it at the time," she said, "but teaching was my calling. It gave me a sense of purpose, a way to make a difference in the world. And now, looking back, I can't imagine doing anything else." Another elder, who spent over 40 years as a carpenter, talked about the satisfaction that comes from working with your hands. "There's something about building something from nothing," he said. "At the end of the day, you can look at what you've created, and there's a real sense of accomplishment." But not all of the elders had fulfilling careers right away. Many of them talked about how they spent years in jobs they didn't love, but eventually found their way to something that gave them joy. One elder, who worked in a factory for most of his life, said, "It wasn't my dream job, but it provided for my family. And in the end, that's what mattered most to me." The key lesson from this chapter is that work isn't just about making a living. It's about finding something that gives you a sense of purpose. Whether it's teaching, building, creating, or caring for others, the elders emphasize that the most fulfilling careers are the ones that align with your values and passions. Many of the elders also talk about the importance of balance. They warn against getting so caught up in work that you forget to enjoy life. One elder, who had been a successful business owner, shared how he spent years working long hours, missing out on time with his family. "I thought I was doing the right thing," he said, "but looking back, I wish I had spent more time with my kids." Chapter 4. Nobody's Perfect. Lessons for Parenting. Parenting, the elders say, is one of the greatest joys and challenges in life. They've raised children, seen them grow into adults, and now reflect on what they've learned from the experience. One of the key lessons they share is that there's no such thing as a perfect parent. You will make mistakes, but what matters most is the love and attention you give your children. One elder, a mother of 5, shared how, when she was raising her children, she often worried about whether she was doing everything right. "I used to stress about the smallest things," she said. "But now, looking back, I realized that the most important thing was just being there for them, loving them and supporting them." Another elder, a father of 3, talked about the importance of letting your children be who they are. "You can't control everything," he said. "Your kids are going to make their own choices, and sometimes they're going to make mistakes. But as long as you've raised them with love and taught them the right values, they'll find their way." The elders also emphasize the importance of spending time with your children. Many of them talk about how, in hindsight, the moments they cherish the most are the simple, everyday ones. Playing with their kids, reading to them, or just sitting and talking. "It's not the big vacations or the expensive toys that matter," one elder said. "It's the time you spend together that makes the biggest difference." Chapter 5. Find the Magic. Lessons for Aging and Happiness. Growing old, the elders say, is inevitable, but how you approach it makes all the difference. Many of them talk about how, as they aged, they learned to let go of the things that don't matter and focus on what truly brings them joy. One elder, a 90-year-old woman, shared how, when she was younger, she used to worry about what other people thought of her. "I spent so much time trying to please others," she said. "But as I got older, I realized that none of that matters. What matters is living your life in a way that makes you happy." Many of the elders talk about the importance of gratitude. They've lived through difficult times, illness, loss, financial struggles, but they've learned to find joy in the small things. "Happiness isn't something that happens to you," one elder said. "It's something you create. It's about choosing to be grateful for what you have, even when things are tough." The elders also emphasize the importance of staying active and engaged as you age. Whether it's through volunteering, hobbies, or spending time with family, they talk about how staying connected to the world around them has kept them feeling young at heart. One of the most powerful lessons from this chapter is the idea that happiness is a choice. The elders have lived through times of great hardship, but they've learned that, no matter what life throws at you, you have the power to choose your attitude. "You can't control everything that happens to you," one elder said, "but you can control how you respond to it." Chapter 6. I Can Look Everyone in the Eye. Lessons for Living Without Regrets. As the elders reflect on their lives, one of the most important lessons they share is the importance of living without regrets. Many of them talk about how, looking back, the things they regret the most are not the mistakes they made, but the opportunities they didn't take. One elder, a former businessman, shared how, for years, he played it safe, choosing security over pursuing his dreams. "I thought I was doing the right thing," he said. "But now, looking back, I wish I had taken more risks. I wish I had followed my passions, instead of always doing what was expected of me." The elders emphasize the importance of following your heart and not being afraid to take risks. They talk about how, at the end of your life, you won't regret the things you tried and failed at. You'll regret the things you didn't try. Another key lesson from this chapter is the importance of forgiveness. Many of the elders talk about how, as they got older, they learned to let go of grudges and forgive those who had wronged them. "Holding on to anger and resentment only hurts you," one elder said. "Forgiveness is about freeing yourself and finding peace." Chapter 7. Choose Happiness. Lessons for Joyful Living. The final chapter of the book focuses on one of the most important lessons the elders have to offer: the power of choosing happiness. Throughout their lives, They've learned that happiness isn't something that just happens. It's a choice you make every day. One elder, an 84-year-old man, shared how, after losing his wife of 50 years, he could have easily fallen into despair. "It was the hardest thing I've ever been through," he said. "But I made a decision. I wasn't going to let grief take over my life. I chose to focus on the good times we had and to find joy in the memories we shared." The elders talk about how, no matter what challenges you face, you have the power to choose how you respond. Whether it's through gratitude, finding joy in small moments, or focusing on the positive, they remind us that happiness is something you can create even in difficult times. Conclusion. As we come to the end of this audiobook, we've heard from some of the wisest Americans about the lessons they've learned over a lifetime. These are not just words of advice. They're truths that have been lived, tested, and proven over time. Whether it's in love, work, parenting, or finding happiness, these elders remind us that the key to a fulfilling life is often found in the simplest things: gratitude, patience, love, and a willingness to embrace life's challenges. As you go about your own life, take a moment to reflect on these lessons. How can you apply them to your own journey? How can you live with fewer regrets, more joy, and a deeper sense of purpose? Thank you for listening to this audiobook based on 30 Lessons for Living. If you found these insights helpful, don't forget to share this wisdom with others. And remember, happiness is a choice you can make every day.